Good morning, Morena, everybody. My name's Sandra Lyle, and I am the Talent and Culture Business Partner. So that's our human resources team at ANZ, and I support the business segment. And today I'm going to help lead and facilitate this session. So I'd just like to welcome everybody along. Just a few housekeeping issues before we kick into the actual webinar. It's estimated that the session will take about 45 minutes. And you've all been auto-muted just due to the large number of attendees. So during the session, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll have an opportunity to look at questions towards the end of the presentation. And also, if you've got any potential technical issues, please just click on the hands up, or once again, put things in the chat, and one of our people will be able to assist you, hopefully. And after the webinar has been run, we will send you a list of the resources that we've covered in the presentation. So without further ado, I'll kick off into the actual detail of the seminar. The pages to come through. Some delay in the slides. Yeah, next one, thanks. Anyway, I guess for all of us, you'd have to be probably living in a cave or somewhere where you're not in view of social media to not know that we're really in the middle of a real challenge from a recruitment and an employment perspective. There's a skills gap. Job ads are hitting a high record. Some particular industries are having very high turnover. There's that term, the Great Resignation, that's been used for, I guess, a few years now, but that's become even more of an imperative. People are job hunting, low unemployment. New Zealanders are going overseas. So it's all sort of coming to a head. So really what that means is that with it's a competitive environment in terms of recruitment, it's really even more imperative to retain and hold on to your current staff as well as attract new ones. So therefore, retention is key, and as part of that, understanding your employees, what their experience is and what motivates them, and having insights to drive a better experience for them will then help with retention and impact your bottom line. So what we're aiming to cover today is some high-level models from theories around, I guess, employee experience and employee engagement, and the impact that the manager has on that experience, and then talk more specifically about what we do in ANZ and give some case studies on real-life experience with employee engagement, and give some tips to small businesses. And yes, the slides will be emailed out. So what I'd like to start off with is a model that we call the employee experience measurement model. And really what this talks about is it shows the sum of all the interactions that an employee has both with and within the organisation that help frame the experience that they have. So I just want to talk through those 4 quadrants with you. The one called the social environment is all about the people I work with who help me succeed and help me grow. So really that's all about the teams that people might work with, the leader, the relationships, how those people interact with each other, what support and trust they have. So it's a critical part of how people experience working in your organisation. And then there's wellbeing and inclusion, which is quite a broad area covering both your psychological and your physical wellbeing or health, but also that sense of belonging and respecting individual differences. So somebody feeling that I belong and I can thrive at this organisation. The one around enabling environment is probably one that you would come to mind straight away. That's really, what is the physical workspace like for people if they work in an office or work at home? What's the technology like? What are the processes and practices? So how does that help me? Do I have what I have? Do I have what I need to do my job well? And the 4th quadrant is one called moments that matter. And that's an interesting one because it might be that as a business, you might talk about moments that matter for your customers. Well, actually, moments that matter is also a really important aspect for employees as well. And what that really means is that the most important things are done well. So what happens when somebody joins your company, and how are they inducted, or how do they learn, how are they welcomed? What happens when maybe they get a promotion, or it's their annual anniversary of being there? What happens when they achieve something or do something well? How are they sort of treated and recognised? And also there's a broader aspect to that. What about their broader outside of life experiences? What happens when they might have a bereavement in the family or have a baby, and how does your organisation support or treat them? So it's quite a key aspect as well. So if you bring all those four pieces together, the theory is around that every interaction affects how an employee thinks and feels about the organisation, and that then directly impacts their engagement, how they might advocate for your organisation, retention and whether they're going to stay, how they'll perform, and how they'll grow. And then obviously that then has a flow and impact to customer and business outcomes. So it's quite an all-encompassing model. And this next slide, I'm not going to read it through, but we can all go on and Google what employee engagement is, and there'll be quite a few different theories that come out, as you can imagine. And these are some of the definitions. But really, in sum, employee engagement is really, how do employees feel about their experience? How do they work and connect to their workplace, and how that impacts their motivation to work harder and perform? And that's why employee engagement is a critical retention element. And then the next slide talks about the impact that the manager has, because that's obviously, as you can imagine, critical. And I suspect that on this call, most of you are business owners, but you're highly likely to be the manager as well. So this is really the accountability that you have as the manager as well as a business owner. And so the impact the manager has on employee engagement, these are 5 of the points, and they do have interdependencies, but I'll just talk through them briefly. The one on the left about purpose is quite an interesting one, because really that's the role that you have as a manager, and sharing with people what your organisation is all about. What is your cause or belief, or why do you do what you do? So it's beyond sort of that widget aspect of working for an organisation. So at ANZ, we share a purpose with our employees around shaping a world where people and communities thrive. We're a bank and we're a financial institution, but we want our people to work with customers to be more than lending and depositing money. That's a much bigger aspect of our customers' business growth. So I guess it's sharing and reinforcing that purpose, that people feel there's a reason for me coming to work and helping to contribute to something. The development and learning is obviously another key role that the manager has to play in terms of, how do I make sure that I'm coaching people and giving people the skills to do their job when they join or as they develop, but also looking at future opportunities and supporting them to continue to learn and grow. I think the caring one's really interesting, and if you read many leadership articles at the moment, there's quite a bit of airplay about the use of the term empathy. And really this is about knowing and caring about the broader person and supporting them in that wider aspect. And in particular, this has probably become even more reinforced and more relevant since we've had people working in hybrid and working at home, and the challenges with COVID. So really critical to show that empathy and to be caring. The point of ongoing conversations is one that really links into all 5 of these points, in that as well as having those regular, I guess what you could say, task-based conversations, how do I get my job done? Am I meeting my responsibilities and accountabilities? But those conversations need to continue to be broader around the development and learning, around the purpose, and around this last one, focusing on strengths, which is basically, what am I doing well and what should I continue to do well, and recognising the things that are positive and that are strengths. Yeah. So I guess if you reflect back on that earlier employee experience model with the 4 quadrants, the role of the manager links into these 5 aspects, that really the role in impacting that social environment, the well-being, the enabling environment, and the moments that matter interplays. And I guess it's a key role that the impact the manager has on that employee engagement. Great. So I'm now going to pass on to Sophie Robb. Sophie works with me in our talent and culture team, and in particular, she works in a team that supports our employee listening and staff engagement. And she's going to share with you some work that we've been doing at ANZ. And I think probably just to set the scene, really acknowledging that, you know, at ANZ we have over 5,000 employees, so we're quite a big scale compared to yourselves as business owners. However, the principles and what we undertake can be adapted to the size of the organisation and is still really relevant. So that's why we'd sort of like to share those with you. So I'm going to pass over to Sophie. Thanks, Sophie.
Great, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, so as Sandra said, my name is Sophie Robb and I work in a team that focuses on all things culture and engagement. So at ANZ, we have an overall listening strategy, and this is where we really look at the best ways to listen to our employees and to make sure that their experience working here is even better. So like Sandra said, I'm just going to talk you through what we do. As you can see on this slide, at ANZ, we have a survey called My Voice, our My Voice survey, and this is the primary channel we use for listening and measuring our employee engagement. So our My Voice survey goes out to all our eligible staff around twice a year, and it normally contains around 30 questions, and the questions cover a range of topics, including engagement, obviously, but also things like learning and growth, well-being and inclusion. And when we have the results of the survey, for transparency, we actually give staff access to a dashboard where they can see results across the organisation and for their teams. Our results are then reviewed and discussed at a team level, and the team is then empowered to determine what they want to focus on and how they'll go about that. So we've actually in recent times moved away from more of a leader-led approach, really just to give employees that opportunity to expand on the results and determine what's important for them. We go to the next slide. Great. So at this slide, it's just looking at what we've learned. So we've obviously been doing our My Voice survey for a little while now. And we have definitely learned a few things over that time, and we've been able to make some improvements. So some of the things that we have changed include refining our question set and really focusing on asking the ones that are really important to us. I think a key learning for us and probably for everyone is that really try not to ask a question if you're not going to do anything with the data. What we found was that there's no better way to annoy and disengage someone if you're not going to do anything with it. We've been able to reduce the number of surveys as well. So at one point we had quite a few different surveys going out across the year, and we were really starting to see some of that survey fatigue and decline in participation. So we've looked to condense it into one more meaningful My Voice survey. And over the years, the survey has actually given us an avenue to ask key topic questions. So instead of having those lots of different surveys that I talked about, we're able to start, look at asking questions on topics specific. So for instance, at the start of COVID, we were able to ask questions and check on our employees' wellbeing and just get an idea about how everyone was going. Now, previously, we used the information at an organisation level, and like I said, it was aimed at leaders to drive the change, but we have moved towards that greater transparency for employees with a dashboard, and I will show you a quick example of that shortly and what it looks like. And from the survey, we also saw that our speak up scores were lower than what we wanted, and we really wanted to focus on that as a priority. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what speak up is, so speak up is when really looking at when our staff feel comfortable and safe to share ideas, opinions or concerns, and even calling out if they see something that's not right. So that's what we sort of class as speak up. We have, like I said, focused on it, and we have seen our speak up improve over time and have actually been really happy with our recent survey results. We've also been able to use the diversity and inclusion data just to see how we're tracking in certain areas and topics. And some of you might have seen that women in management, for instance, gets a lot of focus at the moment. So this is one way we track that, for instance, just one of many ways that we do that. So I guess just an important part of the survey is that we've been able to track key metrics and trends over time. And I think that's a really key note, is that it's not so much about having a good or a bad score, but it's really looking at that trend and to see if it's improving or not. Like that's sort of the important bit. We go to that next slide. Great. So this is just an example of what employees see in their My Voice dashboard that they all get. So you'll see some key metrics with with engagement being in there at the top. And we've recently been able to add in 3 things to focus on for a team. So just a bit of tips and tricks in there as well. So anyone can see any team or division results as long as a response threshold is met. So our survey responses are anonymous, and this is an important part for us to uphold. From here, like I said, the teams work together, determine what they want to focus on. We actually just suggest one thing and come up with how they want to do it, and then they can track their progress in the next survey. Although we do know and appreciate that these things can take time. Also important, going back to what Sandra was saying before, is that teams celebrate their strengths as well. So this is a great way to see what you're doing really well in. And it can also be a real opportunity for learning as well. So if one team's doing really well at something, they can share learnings and what they do with other teams who want to get better on that. Next slide. So just on this slide, obviously, My Voice is the big survey and all the bells and whistles that go around that. But we do have a few other ways that we listen to our employees that are focused at more of a team level. So we have something called a team health check, which is just a really small 5-question survey that a team can opt to complete anytime. We've got exit surveys. We do ad hoc surveys from time to time. For example, we've recently done some surveys around how people are feeling about returning to work and returning to the office. So some of our team practices are an opportunity for, feedback and discussion on what went well and things like that. So for some of our teams work in an agile environment, and so we do things like retros, or at the end of a project, it's really just about discussing what went well and what could we do better next time. So again, just enabling that regular feedback and listening. There is also a website called Ideas Boards that provides another way to get feedback, and we use that as part of meetings and things like that to get people comfortable to share ideas and opinions during a meeting or even a presentation. We do have a few things that we're working on to come. We're always trying to get better at this stuff. So we're working on a 360 survey at the moment, which is a growth and development tool that lets you do a self-assessment. Your manager assesses you, and then you get peers and direct report feedback as well. We're also looking into events-based opportunities, so that moments that matter that Sandra talked about earlier. So looking at maybe onboarding, the internal job move, return from parental leave, resignation, all those types of moments that matter as well. And also non-survey data. So data from existing ANZ systems and sources, we've obviously got a lot. So just looking at ways that we can tap into that better. And just by using a mix of survey and non-survey data sources, we're just looking to get insights into both perception and behaviour. So what I say and think versus what I do. So just a few things that we're working on at the moment. I'll now pass it back to Sandra.
Great, thanks for that, Sophie. What we'd now like to move from, I guess, the high level information and actually find out about a specific business and team and how they've managed it. So I'm going to have a chat with Greg Dirksberger, who's one of our senior managers at business, and we're going to talk about how he has used the My Voice survey for his team. So good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
First of all, just to set the scene, it'd be great if you could tell us a bit about your role and the size and makeup of your team.
Sure. So I'm, what you said, senior manager in our ANZ business team. So I've been doing this role for about 18 months. Prior to that, I was a relationship manager in our corporate agri team based out of Christchurch. So I was sort of more on the tools, so to speak, looking after bigger customers based out of Christchurch. And then about 18 months ago, we went through a bit of an internal change, and I was given the opportunity to lead our Christchurch and West Coast agri lending team. So my role now, predominantly a people manager, people leader role within the organisation, and I've got about 17 staff across the 2 locations of Christchurch and Greymouth, and 11 of those staff report directly through to me.
Great, thanks for that. So I guess let's start off with employee engagement, and why, as a people leader, measuring employee engagement is really important for you.
Yeah, it's a great question, a great starting point. Like, I think it doesn't matter what organisation you work for or business, or even if over the years been involved in sports teams, a positive culture is really, really important. And I think, highly engaged employees ultimately contribute to a positive work environment. I think just from a business lens, like if you want to have a profitable, growing business, then you really need highly engaged employees. More engaged employees will go above and beyond and actually stretch to try and make the business, more profitable. And I think as well, like, it was a comment on one of the slides earlier around the tight labour market. Like, I know I'm just constantly on the lookout for that next bit of talent, and it's a really tight market out there. It's really hard to attract really good people. So looking after the ones you've got is really important.
Great, thanks for that. So in terms of the actual survey itself, it'd be interesting for us to talk through when you had the survey last year and what you did when you got your My Voice engagement results.
Sure, yeah. So quite fresh in the job, and had my first employee engagement back, and it was around 55, so very low, and probably quite an important exercise to go through and actually unpick all that data and work out where the areas we could improve on. I suppose the point I make is it wasn't just one silver bullet or one big bang. It was a whole lot of things that added to the improvement that we've seen over the last 12 months. So the first thing I did is I actually just formed a group of our more senior members of the team and got them to actually own the follow-up. So I was still part of it, but I think the key message there is it didn't have to be led from me, but it had to be led from within the team. One of the first things we did is we actually set up feedback sessions once a month. So provided all staff an opportunity to go to other members of the team who maybe they feel a bit more comfortable to go back to and provide feedback or any raise any questions or any pain points they may be experiencing, and so allowed them to go direct to them and more on a more regular basis, so once a month. I think another big challenge we've had over COVID is the lack of social connection. We're working from home for a large part of the year, so when we were able to get back together, it was important to have those social connections again, actually do some stuff outside of just the core banking work environment. So we did a bit of that. Another thing we did is we had a team-wide planning session end of last year, and the aim of that really was to say, well, what are the goals for our business or our business unit for the next 12 months, and got the team members to be part of that, so they felt like they were contributing to the team-wide goals. Another thing as a line manager, we do have regular monthly check-in meetings with our direct reports. So with a real focus on career development, any feedback around their work-ons, and then what I can do to sort of help them with that. And I think one of the most important things we did as a senior leadership team, so myself and the 4 other seniors in our Christchurch business team, was have a consistent approach. So we got the same messaging coming from the top down, and that created accountability across our whole business team. And I think ultimately the purpose of all that was to try and lift engagement and make staff feel like they were part of the wider business team goals.
Great, thanks for that, Greg. And actually, just to clarify or reiterate for people, with our My Voice survey, we have about 25 to 30 questions, and there's 4 particular questions that make up what we call an engagement overall summary result. And when Greg talked about having 55%, what that means is that in his team, 55% of his people were 100% engaged and committed, and it could mean that 45% might have been not necessarily disengaged, but might have been sitting on the fence. But ideally, obviously, you're aiming for more than half of your employees to be engaged. So just to kind of help with that, how we use our data, and I guess that engagement percentage is one of the data points, and then there's a lot of questions that Greg would have used to then drill and have the conversation. So that's great. So we do the survey sort of six monthly. We do pulse surveys, and so Greg talked about the result last year, but we've had a relatively recent survey in sort of March, April 2022 result, and so interested to know, with all that sterling work that you've done, whether that made a difference, and how it went for you and your team.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to start to your point around the 55%, it was a massive lift to 80, so that was massive for our team. And then there was a specific question in the survey around, do senior leaders take an interest in my development? And on my survey, that scored like one of the highest in the bank. So for me, that was a real pride moment to say, hey, look, all the work I've put in over the last 12 months is actually paying off. So staff feel like there's someone there who actually has an interest in their career and development at ANZ.
Great. And so now that you've got these new results. What are your plans now, or what are you doing with the newer results this year with your team?
Yeah, so I think it's probably just a continuation of what we were already doing. So I think the learn for me is it's not a big bang thing you do once a year. It's doing the fundamentals more regularly. So it's just a continuation of those monthly check-in meetings with my direct reports, with a focus on career and development. I think as well, just in terms of trying to get a bit more, I suppose, connection with the wider senior leaders within our business team here. So we've set up morning teas with the other senior leaders. So my staff have another contact point they can go at any time to and discuss career or development opportunities within ANZ. And then the other thing, a big rock we're working on now is actually trying to facilitate a buddy or mentorship program. So linking people up with mentors, maybe internally or externally, to say, hey, look, where am I at in terms of my journey, and how can you help me get there?
Good, great. And so that's great to see the ongoing changes and improvements. So thanks for giving us that context. I wonder if there's anything else that you thought would be relevant or useful to share with our business owners.
Well, I think that the point I'd probably make is, and I'm guessing there's a diverse range of businesses, business owners, business types, scale on this call. You're probably sitting there thinking, well, that's all well and good for ANZ. You're a massive organisation with, as you say, large number of employees, huge HR resource, a lot of data, a lot of insight. But I don't think it has to be a big bang thing. It can just be about starting small. It could be as simple as a monthly survey with your staff. And I think the other point I'd make is it doesn't necessarily have to be owned by the business owner, but maybe someone within the team or within the senior leadership of the team, like them actually owning that with the staff. And I think just the ultimate goal of all this is just trying to work out what makes your employees tick.
Great. Thanks very much, Greg. And Greg will be able to answer some questions at the end if you have any particularly for him, which would be great. And actually what Greg's just talked about leads in nicely to the next point that I wanted to talk through. So I'll just wait for the slide to come up. And really what I guess it's a flow through in terms of what are some quick tips for smaller businesses. So that follows on from Greg's comment. I think, look, the key point out of anything is talk to your people, ask for feedback, action it. So whatever size your business, whether it's 2 or 3 people to 25 or whatever, so whether it's one-on-one or individual meetings, make sure you're asking the right questions, ask for feedback. And as Sophie said earlier, if you're asking for feedback, do something with it, or if you're not going to do something with it, explain why you're not going to and what the context is. So I think that's something all businesses can do is do that first point. And then I guess it depends on the size of your organisation and what your own skill level is and who you've got in the organisation. It might be that you think, oh, I could design my own survey, and you can Google, as you can imagine, and come up with all sorts of options. But certainly SurveyMonkey, for instance, I went and had a look, play around there, and they have templates for employee engagement that you could adapt and amend for your own organisation. I guess depending on your budget and the size of your business, another option is to actually use one of the established firms who have tools for small businesses. So Gallup, for instance, which is a kind of a well-known, I guess, organisation that conducts engagement surveys for large organisations, they also run a smaller one for smaller businesses. And I guess if you've got the budget and the capability to do it, one of the advantages of doing one of those types of surveys is that it does also give you the ability to benchmark your organisation to other organisations and compare how you're doing, so to speak. And then there might be some hybrid version where you might already have, depending on, once again, the size and scale of your organisation, you might have some HR outsourcing that you do, or you work with somebody externally, and it might be you get them to help you with the combination of either the meetings or designing a survey or using a consulting firm. So I guess those are some of the different options, so to speak, that you could look at as businesses. So really that, I guess, is the main aspects that we wanted to share with you, and now sort of taking the opportunity to answer some of your questions. And I know there's been a couple that have been posted up here. Just need to look in the chat. The first one was from my friend Phil Hartwick, I do believe, which was around speak up and how do we measure that and analyse it, etc. So within our employee engagement survey, we have 2 specific questions that actually address speak up. So I think one of them is something like, I can raise issues and concerns without fear of reprisal. So we measure what the percentage is that, and at the moment I think we're sitting overall, Sophie might correctly, I think it's in the late 70s, or even might be about 80% of our staff say I can speak up. So we've had improvement in that over the last few years, which is great. And some of the initiatives that have been I guess undertaken, because it's a bit of a catch-22, because you could say if it's to speak up, do they want to even talk to their own manager? But it might be that they don't want to speak up at a more senior level. So really, it's, I guess, fleshing that out with your team in either focus groups or bringing another manager in or an HR leader in to have those discussions and get feedback and talk about what might be preventing people from feeling comfortable with speak up. And we've also developed a couple of I guess small sort of workshops that where you can show a video with your team that sort of sets the scene around giving feedback and receiving feedback, and then some prompting questions that a team can talk about how it would be easier to do that within their team. And then probably one other initiative that we've got, and this is where you've got to remember the size and the scale of our organisation. We have a team of people called Speak Up Advocates, which are around 50 of our employees right across the business who have volunteered and been given training and sort of listening and giving support, where if you want to go and talk to somebody totally independent or neutral around a speak up issue, you can go that way. So we've sort of got different avenues in terms of within your team or not within your team. So hopefully that answers your question. So now I'm just trying to find the rest of the questions. So it's me and my technical competencies.
Morena, everyone.
Here we go. Hi, tips and tricks, Crystal, that one around team builder?
Yes, definitely. So we had a really great question. Morning, everyone. I'm Crystal, and I'm going to be moderating the Q&A session for you today. So what are some really cool tips and tricks to get those who are not or don't want to engage? An example someone gave is maybe a team building exercise. So what's a couple of tips and tricks you fabulous people can give our audience?
I'll have a go, and then I'm going to pass to Greg, because I'm sure he'll be an expert on this one as well. And I guess it really is reflecting, it's what we talked about at the start, is that know what motivates your people and what are, I guess, what are their makeup, because everybody is different. But certainly, so I think part of that is that bringing people together and having fun is an important aspect. But I guess it's being clear for people that why we're doing it is bringing people together. It's not everybody's game, but sometimes you're doing it for the support of the rest of your team, but it's also understanding for those people what is it that gets them excited and how can we help. And it might be that it's whether it's having a morning tea or it's just they want to just have a one-on-one chat with everybody and actually facilitating that. So I guess it's understanding everybody's motivations and seeing if there's a way you can bring it all together. I don't know if that fully quantifies it. And Greg, I don't know if you've had that example yourself, because you always do get that but it's about people being honest about, hey, I'm coming to the party, it's not my bag, but I want to be here to support everybody else. But if I had my way, I'd rather just have a good book to read, but kind of being able to support them. And that's not my actual example. But so Greg, I don't know if you had that scenario in your team at all?
Yeah, well, I think when we tend to do planning sessions, sort of half a year or quarterly, it's actually having a bit of a fun activity at the end of it and making a bit of a competition. I think, and mixing the team members up, so it puts them outside their comfort zone a little bit so they get to know someone else. I think it's almost that forced social time together. It's often the best time outside of the actual work environment to get people to sort of build a better team.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Teams, we've got another great question here. Can you please, again, they want to see your tips and your tricks to keep staff engaged with flexible working options, i.e. working from home. So how can you make sure we keep staff engaged as a team?
That's very topical. I'll talk at a high level, and then I'm probably going to pass that across to my expert Greg again, because we are literally having that opportunity or challenge at the moment, because probably like most organisations, we've had the bulk of our people been working from home for quite a long period of time, and we've actually just been encouraging people to come back over the last couple of months. But in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had, I guess, a more dedicated, I guess, almost promotion, and we're calling it the big OE, which is the big office experience, to encourage people to come back to work. And I guess, once again, size and scale, we're doing things at probably quite a different level from everybody else. And so we're really encouraging people. There's 3 levels. We have some people who could be 100% work at home, depending on what their job is and what the requirements are. We have some other people that are 100% working in the office, once again, because of their job or being customer facing, etc. But probably the bulk of our employees we're encouraging, or 2 to 3 days in the office, and that's where and so really it's once again a really key role of the manager, like a Greg, is talking with the team in terms of what's going to suit everybody, but also explaining the context of why we want to do it, and it is around the benefits of all coming together, and both the social aspect, but the collaborating and the innovation and the getting ideas off each other. And we've actually developed some sort of conversation starters for managers to be able to use with their teams to help facilitate that. It is a challenge. We have some employees who say, "Oh, I've saved money by being at home. I don't want to do the commute thing." But it's actually that's great. But we're here to work and support our business customers, etc. And how can we do that in a slightly different way? But it's still really important to have that collaboration. So I guess we've started with the softly in terms of having conversations and seeing how it goes. And I think we'll probably be seeing over the next month what the percentage of people are that are returning to the office, and do we need to perhaps be slightly more direct. And I think Greg, can I ask how it's going in your area? Because I think each team is probably slightly different, I think, depending on the nature of the people and the teams.
Sure, I think actually in Christchurch we've had one of the highest occupancy rates again. So I think that's been really positive. The point I make is, I know it's been really challenging in the last couple of years, and having that lack of connectivity, like you can't create that team environment over Zoom, all over Teams. It's just not the same. And the same for developing your young staff or your new staff. So we've almost set a precedent that, hey, look, as a minimum, Monday, Fridays, that's when we tend to have our team meetings. You should be in the office, should be there spending time with your team. And over time, what we've actually just seen, I think if you create a positive culture in the office, people do actually want to come back. Like I myself, I know the benefit of working from home a couple of days a week. You tend to get, if you've got a lot of report writing to do, we've got a lot of emails to catch up on. Working from home is a great place to be, but I think actually in terms of that team environment, being back in the office is personally, I think that's the best place to be. So yeah.
Excellent. Had a really good question. So when you guys were talking through your presentation, you were referring to manager, which is great. Somebody asked that question. Are we talking general manager? Are we talking direct report manager? And how do they fit in that different level of management structure? Which is a really cool question.
That's a good, I mean, I guess ultimately the direct line manager has the most impact, because that's the person who generally is having those conversations and working most closely. However, if we're talking hierarchy, the general manager on the next level is hugely important in terms of setting the scene and setting the direction. And you think about things like the purpose and the direction, that role is hugely important in terms of defining the culture, but also that person is actually managing the line manager. So I guess they're going to practice what they receive as well, if that makes sense. So it's a mixture of both, but I mean the impact of the direct line manager is key. And when you there's I don't know what the statistic is, but I know there's research that's been done that when you talk about people staying at an organisation or people leaving an organisation, the impact that direct line manager has on people staying versus leaving is hugely significant. So it puts a lot of pressure on a line manager.
Did you have anything to add to that in terms of?
No, I think it's really the way we're structured. Having a line manager is like, my role is completely dedicated now to running the business and looking after staff, as opposed to being like, I get out in the field, so to speak, and get along and see customers, but it's always with my staff to support them. So my role is really dedicated to helping grow my people. So that's sort of the structure we've gone for, and I think that's how you get the development of people over time.
Now, this is a really good question too. So technology can play a really important role to help improve staff engagement. What are some of the tools that you've used or that you can think of that perhaps could help support business owners from a technology space?
Okay, not using Zoom, using Teams.
I think that Survey Monkey was a really cool one too, around the surveys.
That's interesting, because I guess, you know, we are benefiting being in a large organisation where we have people that create tools. So I guess if you've got a digitally savvy person, for instance, our team health check, which is like a 5-question survey that you can do every couple of months just to say how you're feeling, how you're doing, what could the team do better. I'm not a whiz, but I suspect that anybody could probably pull that together if they knew what they were doing. But and it's probably a bit of a cliche, but I did, when I talk about teams, which is what we normally use, that's just hugely important for collaboration and sharing information, and even actually having quick calls with individuals or team chats and sort of team sessions. But I don't know, Sophie or Greg, whether you've got any.
The only other one that I was thinking was the Idea Boards website that I mentioned before. It's a really great tool. Like I said, if you're in a presentation or in a meeting where you're really trying to get input, ideas, feedback sessions going, and it's just a great way for all employees. You know, you quite often have some people that are a bit shy and, you know, don't want to, a bit nervous about speaking up in front of a lot of people, but it's a great way to get everyone sort of involved and to be able to have a voice and things like that. So that's and it can be a bit of fun as well. It doesn't have to be anything too serious. It can be a bit of fun and how you do that.
That's a good point. And that's a free tool. It's just ideas, but with a Z. And you're right. You just go in and but it might be the end of the meeting. You put in, what do we do well? What didn't happen well? Or what could we improve on? And people can put questions in without having to put their name to it.
Yeah, and we've seen, I think, I mean, again, Greg, you might have some other things, but I think we've seen personally, especially with people working remotely and things like that, if we've come together as a team and are trying to have a bit of a team building exercise, there's lots of different fun surveys and quizzes and things like that you can tap into. So just all of that, creating that buzz and connection and things that we've kind of all spoken about. I think that all helps and contributes towards that employee engagement.
One of the fun ones, just talking on that, Sophie, is Kahoot.
Yes.
And I've actually used that, and lots of teams use it. The other thing I love about these webinars is we get to bring our small business owners into the conversation. So thanks, Mel. Mel has shared Jotform, apparently is pretty cool. So go and Google Jotform, Jotform, and also Trello boards, so Trello boards. Apparently they're really cool, and Phil and Mel are using that technology and finding it super useful. So please go and have a Google for yourselves. It's great to hear from other business units in terms of what they're using. So we've got a really cool question here. So we've had a few people in our team that are quite experienced, and so are doing the same role for quite a long time. So it sounds a little bit more like a coaching, kind of conversation. But how can we make sure they're having challenges with blending the two camps, so to speak? So people that haven't been in the role for a long time and people that are new, fresh blood into the team. So how do they go about blending the two camps, so to speak, in a really useful and meaningful way that they get a really good team dynamic? I'm going to throw this one over to you, Greg, being the people leader of today, and then you may pass that round to Sandra and Sophie for their thoughts.
That's a great question, because I think, like in my team, case in point, I do have a very, a diverse group of people in terms of age and experience and background. So, look, I think it's actually a strength. Like, often, particularly in banking, like having some of those not older, but wiser heads who actually have been in the game a long time and seen through a few business cycles to be able to sort of support our young staff is really valuable. And likewise, having that young, energetic sort of manager who just wants to get out there and be out there in the market talking to customers. So I think it's actually a strength, and it's actually just playing to people's different strengths. And we've structured our team like that recently, just around custom makeup to try and coincide with people's different skill sets. So I think actually mixing your team, so we have sub teams within my wider team, so pods that work together. So actually trying to mix up people, it's almost again forced sort of collaboration, so that you're not sort of having two camps of people. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing around diversity, and I know we use that word a lot, but often it's thought about from a gender perspective, but actually diversity of experience. And I think Mel's made a comment there, and you're totally right around it's actually, I mean, it's an actual opportunity to use the people with the experience to support your newbies and buddy them up, etc. And also it just means you do bring quite different perspectives rather than just the one. So I actually I think we should embrace that. Yeah.
And here's also some good feedback from Phil, again, bringing the business owners into the discussion, which we love. I have worked with teams that design their own induction programs, and everyone gets involved, takes responsibility to help the newbies feel included and inclusive. Really awesome feedback. Thanks for that, Phil. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our guest speakers. If there's any other last minute questions, we've probably got about 5 minutes before we do hand back to Sandra for her fabulous wrap up and final thoughts. But I just want to take a quick round robin for the three of you quickly and just say if there was 2 things that you would love the audience to walk away with today from what we've talked about, what would be those 2 things for you that are most meaningful around engagement, around connecting with your people, around coaching, around the surveys? What are the 2 things for you? I think we'll pass over to Sophie first, and then to Greg, and then to Sandra. So Sophie, what are those 2 things for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about listening to your employees. I think that kind of is the number one focus. Listen, and then flowing on from that, taking on board any feedback and communicating and getting your employees involved and finding that common ground together. So there's probably a few more than 2 in there, but they all kind of align to that. Yeah, those would be my key points.
Perfect. Kia ora, Sophie. Greg, what about for you? What are those 2 key things?
Yeah, I think it's actually making the team be part of it. Like, it's not always driven from top down. I think you get better buy-in when the team actually feel part of the process. That's probably the big one for me. And I think the other one is having the time in your diary, actually booking it in to spend that one-on-one time with staff. I know myself, it's a big role, you get really busy, actually setting that time aside, and to point before around listening, actually having that time in your diary so you're just focused on that person and being present, because otherwise, yeah, as I say, you can get sort of lost in your work and the days can roll by. So yeah.
Kia ora, Greg. Sandra?
Probably all very similar. I've got 3 things. It's basically ask questions, listen, and act. So it's kind of pretty, yeah. But
Perfect.
Asking is important.
Thank you, team. Hey, we've got one last question, which I think we'll answer before we hand back to Sandra for wrap-up and final thoughts and recapping. So what suggestions do you have for employees who would like their managers or business leaders to spend more time on culture building, but the managers don't see the need or think there is the time? So I'll throw that one open, team.
That's a good question. I guess a lot of it is, what is the benefits? So I think if they're going to put some suggestions through, if employees are going to suggest, it's rather than I think we need to work on this, it's actually probably being able to identify why it's a problem or issue, and if we spent more time in it, what benefit would it be to us as a team and to the organisation? So it's probably a bit of a sell job rather than just we should do this. It's actually what's the problem that we're trying to fix, and without being too complicated, yeah, what would the result be? So but I guess it's, you need to have a manager who's going to listen. So it's probably framing up a conversation and working it through. And it might also be enlisting the support of other people to have that conversation. So, you know, if the whole team feels like that, have a chat as a team and then come forward with a suggestion. Don't do it on your own. Or perhaps there might be another team that's doing it really well and engage the support of another leader or somebody else. So you can either do it singularly or support a team. But if Sophie or Greg have got better ideas, welcome to hear them.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think, yeah, first and foremost is, you know, what are you trying to achieve out of it? And absolutely it's important. But yeah, and then just put forward why and the benefits. I think exactly what you've said, Sandra.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. So from like a people leader's perspective, I always try to say to staff, like, come up with a solution, like rather than flip it on its head. It's not a complaint. It's actually, hey, we see an opportunity here. And actually, as business owners, I'm sure they want to make more money. So it's like trying to link that benefit. So, well, if we have a positive culture, we've engaged employees, this is where we think we could be in a year's time, and actually paint that picture. And I think you're going to get a lot more buy-in from the business owner or their leader. Yeah.
Perfect. And I also think, because I've been a previous leader for over 20 years, the more you have conversations with a team, the more you have team huddles, the more team meetings that you can have to start thinking about the problems that the business may have or the problems you're customers may have, you create a solution provider culture. And it's really awesome where people then will feel included, and they will also feel comfortable to speak up. And the more that you share as a team, the more problems that your business will be able to solve, whether it be internally or whether it be from a customer perspective, which is really crucial for any business owner. Well, I'd love to take this opportunity to thank our fabulous ANZ speakers, Sandra, Sophie, and Greg. Thank you for your wonderful feedback. Thank you for your wonderful thoughts. It's great to have such a different perspective, and that's why I've loved working with you three around this webinar. But what we're going to do now, team, is we're going to hand you back to Sandra, and Sandra's going to take you through a bit of a recap and some final thoughts on today's session and also close for us. Kia ora, Sandra.
It's very much a very brief recap. I think really what we've spoken through is that whatever the size of your business, from small to medium to large, understanding what motivates your people, listening to them, knowing how they feel about their employee experience will all help you take actions to retain those people, but also think about attracting people in the future. And ultimately, your people will advocate and they'll perform if they're engaged. So really, great people make a great business, and that was the key points that we wanted to get out of today. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you for your questions, and good luck with your people initiatives.